Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bayside High School and to the public hearing. The first order of business this evening is to read the call for the session in accordance, which I will do now, in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code, Section 2-21, and by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, I hereby call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council Thursday, April 27th, 2017 at 6 p.m. at Bayside High School, 49060 Haygood Road, Virginia Beach, Virginia. The purpose of this special formal session is to conduct a public hearing on the fiscal year 2017-18 resource management plan regarding an increase in annual real estate assessments of more than 1%. The mayor is not with us this evening. He's out of the country on city business. Mrs. Henley, I know, is conducting a city function right at this time. She may be able to get here and she may not. It just depends on how long that function continues. The speakers this evening will be allowed 3 minutes to speak, and the clerk will call the speakers' names. And please, if you would, come forward as soon as you're called. And if the clerk calls a second name behind the speaker, if that speaker would come forward and be close to the front where they can get to the microphone as soon as possible. With that being said, Madam Clerk, would you call the first speaker?
Devin Maloney and Felicia Sibor. The first speaker, Devin Mahoney, Felicia Sibor.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Felicia Sibor. I'm a proud member of a Navy family. My husband, Adam, is a retired U.S. Navy chief. He retired after serving our country honorably for 24 years. Our family moved to Virginia Beach 14 years ago because of the Navy. We chose to remain in Virginia Beach because we thought it would be beneficial to our family. In 2014, we used our veterans' benefits to buy a new house in Asheville Park. This was supposed to be our dream home. Our entire family eagerly anticipated the move into the new home. Little did we know what fate had in store for us. Okay. The flood caused by Hurricane Matthew was the latest and the worst of 3 floods that have occurred while we lived in Asheville Park. The flood resulted in us having 4 inches of water on our first floor and about 16 inches of water in our garage. Since we did not have flood insurance at the time, we had to pay for flood water abatement and repairs ourselves. We did receive approximately $15,000 from FEMA. That only has covered approximately 1/3 of what we have spent so far. We have not been able to finish everything that needs to be done because of the financial situation. As a result of the flood, our dream home has become a nightmare for our family. My family does not feel safe in our home. Both my daughters hate living in Asheville Park now. We all worry whenever it rains that there will be another flood. During the flood in October, emergency vehicles were not able to access our neighborhood. We are genuinely concerned about the safety and welfare of our neighbors as well as our family. With hurricane season drawing near, my husband and I are forced to make plans to evacuate if we know that another hurricane or tropical storm hits Virginia Beach. The flooding of communities in Virginia Beach is not a neighborhood problem. It's a problem that concerns the entire community in our city. We need to provide solutions and funding in order to relieve our fellow citizens of this burden. I am fine with the stormwater fee being raised to pay for needed improvements. We need much more reasonable time frame on these projects, such as beginning within 3 years. I also support moving money from ARP and open space to the funding stream for stormwater fixes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Walter Huff or Brooks Summon.
Kind of raise this up a little bit, huh? There you go. Good evening. Yeah. My name is Walter Hoff, and I'm just not here on behalf of my wife and I, Jeanette Ray, but our whole community. It's been greatly impacted by 2 flooding situations we had last year. You know, my wife and I, after coming to Virginia Beach since 1990 and contributing greatly to the revenue base as tourists, in 2002 we purchased and still own a condo at Rudy Inlet. Even then, we knew we wanted to live in Virginia Beach. And finally, after looking at many developments all over the city for over an 8-year span, we decided to build a home in Asheville Park and moved in November of 2014. Regarding the flooding, we were fortunate. We didn't suffer any damage in the 2 floods we had last year. What we saw was water that did come up about halfway up our walkway, but that was pretty much it. Unfortunately, though, many of our neighbors did suffer a lot of damage. I have a dentist who lives in Asheville Park on Channing Lane. That's the subdivision or the part of our development that really got hit hard. Her car was totaled because floodwater totally inundated the inside of her car. Other friends in their 80s were stuck, like a lot of us, in their home for the better part of 3 days. These are 2 people that you saw on the news, and just the fact that they were stuck, as well as many of us, it's just unacceptable. Other neighbors had cherished belongings in their garage damaged, yet others had water damage, as Felicia eloquently told you about, to their floors and the walls of their homes. As I mentioned earlier, we chose Asheville Park, my wife and I, after looking extensively throughout the city. It's a great community, one that will get even greater once the 3 other subdivisions are completed, which are now on hold. With Virginia Beach being below sea level, which we certainly knew about before moving in, and the inevitability of more storms to come, we like to see immediate action on remediating the stormwater management system issues that caused this flooding. We would like to see Asheville Park moved up in priority with other developments we realize were hard hit throughout the city. We know there are a lot of talks going on regarding budgeting to address these stormwater management issues. And I understand and I can accept an increase in our fees if that would expedite getting this issue resolved, because it would help the entire Virginia Beach area. We would like to see it started within 3 years at a maximum. Completing the job between 10 and 15 years is just way too long. If money needs to be pulled from other projects like ARP and the Open Space Program, we're all for it. In conclusion, my wife and I know that we can never escape the risk of flooding here. We also know that there is a problem that makes that risk a lot greater, and we would hate to think of having to move to someplace else that has a lower risk and better water management system.
Your time has expired, sir.
Thank you.
Brooks Summon and Matt Tolleson.
Good evening, and thank you guys for all being here tonight. Don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm also a resident of Asheville Park, and I would like to echo the sentiments of my neighbors who just spoke before me. Like them, I am also fully in favor of increasing the stormwater management fee, as well as taking money from open space and/or ARP. Also, like them, I also agree that we should try to get this done as quickly and efficiently as possible. I know that some of that is not feasible. However, if we can work diligently to accomplish that, that would be great. And lastly, but not least, I would also like to fully support Mr. Hansen's budget proposal. All due respect to Mr. Moss and Ms. Abbott, I just don't think that their budget proposal is fiscally prudent for the city of Virginia Beach. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Matt Tullison and Susan Motley.
Good evening, and thank you for the time. I actually stood before most of you in City Council chambers the Tuesday before Hurricane Matthew and discussed our concern with the flooding situation in Rainier Village of Asheville Park, where I've been for about 3 years. I have, and a lot of my immediate neighbors have worked our tail off, for lack of a better term, to get to that neighborhood, which we also consider our dream neighborhood. And I just feel like the discussion of a 10 to 15 year fix for this is just unacceptable. We are also in favor of taking the money from ARP and open space, and to be totally honest with you, anywhere else that you can get it for an immediate fix. I and some of my neighbors also are in approval of raising some stormwater fees if that will get it fixed quicker. We understand that the shovel can't hit the dirt tomorrow, but again, as I said, 10 or 15 years is unacceptable. The possibility of that same type of storm happening and the two storms together, back to back, I understand are slim, but it could happen. And if it happens every year, we're going to be in the same situation every year. I don't want to be up at 3 in the morning stacking first floor furniture ever again and living in this city, which is a great place where I was born and raised. I just don't think that should have to happen. Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Susan Motley and Heidi Jeffries.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Jones and City Council members. I thank you for this opportunity to speak briefly with you tonight about a matter that has been of concern to me for some time. My name is Susan Motley. I'm a retired Virginia Beach teacher. I am a mother whose children attended beach schools K through 12. One of my grandchildren is currently enrolled in a Virginia Beach elementary school, and 2 more of my grandchildren will enroll over the next 4 years. Since my own 2 children passed through half-day kindergarten, things have changed, and that's an understatement. While we always had lofty learning standards, with the advent of No Child Left Behind and its battery of tests, kindergarten staples like the letter people and other things that our children did have been replaced by a daunting array of standards in learning, in reading, writing, speaking, in math, science, and social studies. I urge you to read those standards if you haven't. They're intense. Along with those are their accompanying assessments. Now, make no mistake, kindergarten teachers take these standards seriously. They know full well they are laying the foundation for our children's academic achievement and, yes, in preparation for their SOL testing that begins in earnest in 3rd grade. They also know they are laying the foundation for our students' lifelong attitude towards school and learning. Yet each day, this state-mandated learning is jammed into, at best, 3 short hours. In my granddaughter's experience, there were few breaks, no snack. In fact, at the open house, the teacher urged parents to make sure their children were full to the top because, according to her teacher, there was no time to be hungry. My grandchild mournfully told me, "Nana, it's all work." I urge you to consider implementing full-day kindergarten for our youngest learners in Virginia Beach. Teachers I personally know who are employed in our full-day programs tell me the additional time allows for teaching that is respectful of learners and that the results exceed those of the half-day programs. Our most precious commodity is our children, and a teacher's most vital asset is time. I trust that by the time my next grandchild and her peers enroll in kindergarten, they will be welcomed to a full-day, inviting learning environment that actually allows teachers to demonstrate that we really know and understand the needs of kindergarten-age children. Thank you.
Heidi Jeffries, Catherine Malley.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. My name is Heidi Jeffries, and I'm a native of Virginia Beach. I went to Windsor Woods Elementary School, Plaza Junior High School, and graduated from Kellam High School. My family moved to Windsor Woods in 1967, and back then, following heavy downpours, I frequently saw backed up storm water flood the streets. As an 11-year-old, I thought it was funny to see people paddling their boats down the middle of the street or pulling people on rafts with a rope tied to their bikes. I would sometimes see newspaper articles reporting the stormwater drainage problems, and sometimes they were accompanied by pictures of my own neighborhood. That was 1967. A couple years later, I had a best friend who lived on Granite Trail in Princess Anne Plaza, and I would walk over to her house from my house in Windsor Woods, the house that my elderly mother still lives in, to hang out with my best friend. More than once I was stranded at her house on Granite because we'd had a storm and the intersection of Hannibal Street and Clubhouse Road flooded so bad I couldn't get back across Rosemont, which was flooded, to get to my house in Windsor Woods, which was flooded. I thought it was funny back then because I didn't have to keep my curfew because I was stranded at my best friend's house. That was 1970. Many years later, now married with little children, I bought a house on Hannibal Street on the Bow Creek Golf Course. Before buying, I walked down the street to get a feel for the neighborhood, and I asked a resident in the middle of the block if the street ever flooded, and he said, "Oh, no." Silly me. I took him at his word. I figured, well, it's been 17 years since my friend lived over here on Granite Trail. Surely the city has addressed the flooding by now. Silly me. Every time it pours, the intersection of Hannibal and Clubhouse still floods, and I have witnessed it since 1987 when I first moved into that house. Boats don't amuse me anymore. Ironically, after Hurricane Matthew, I had to catch a ride in such a boat to get to my mother in Windsor Woods after walking through a mile of hip-high water, and I couldn't get to her house unless I hitched a ride on a boat with some guy who had gotten a boat when he bought a hot tub, and he was out practicing. The storm drainage situation has never changed, and as we all know, when nothing changes, nothing changes. With every downpour, the streets in Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza flood. I don't think it's funny anymore. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Criminal, possibly. Morally reprehensible,
Your time has
certainly,
expired, Mrs.
that
Mullin.
50 years later, the city of Virginia Beach, which in that 50 years has had 11 mayors and 68 members of city council, has not remedied this problem. Thank you, and I urge you to stop the flooding now.
Catherine Malley. George Pilgrim.
My name is Catherine Malley, and I am a preschool teacher at Arrowhead Elementary in Virginia Beach. I am asking you to support full-day kindergarten. In addition to preschool, I have taught first, second, and fourth grades. This year, I am teaching full-day preschool for at-risk children. This is a new program in Virginia Beach and has been well received. It is ironic that we will be sending our students to half-day kindergarten after they have adjusted to a full-day schedule. My pre-K students are familiar with the routines and procedures in a classroom and in our school. They will be able to hit the ground running in a full-day program because they are acclimated to the school environment. They have developed social and emotional skills in getting along with others that will allow them to be fully prepared to learn academic subjects. In my experience with grades 2 and 4, the lack of student social skills often impeded learning and got in the way of developing a positive classroom environment. Students can't work in groups or teams if they can't get along. The model for education currently focuses on differentiated small group teaching, but that means students must be able to function on their own while the teacher is facilitating a small group. We have prepared our pre-K students for this type of learning environment as we work with small groups and learning stations. They are ready to succeed. Putting them in a half-day kindergarten program may stymie their growth and independence. Kindergarten is the entry point into the formal world of academics. In full-day kindergarten, students have the opportunity to experience creative experiences, if only there is time. Kindergarten is a time for painting, singing, building. In a half-day program, these valuable experiences are pushed aside simply because there is no time. In closing, I would like to read you this poem. It talks about what school has become for many children. The case against crayons. Crayons are illegal today, classroom contraband reeking of play. Coloring rainbows makes little sense when standardized tests demand recompense. Instead, small child, put that crayon box away. You won't need 64 colors, just the color gray. Testing 1, 2, 3 is the only goal. All colors but gray will be leached from your soul. Metrics can't be assigned to bright yellow suns. Smiles can't be measured, so crayons are shunned. There's no grade for a child on the blue of their sky, no percentage for joy in an orange butterfly.
Your time
Thank
has
you.
expired. George Pilgrim and Lisa Kubalt.
Council members, my name is George Pilgrim. My topic is boat tax. Recommend City Council members establish a realistic assessment to tax privately owned pleasure boats and watercraft used for recreational purposes. The current assessment is 1/1,000,000 of 1 cent per $100 of boat value. A $100,000 boat is therefore assessed at 1/1000th of a penny, so boat owners currently pay nothing. The advantage doesn't stop there. New boat ramp at Pungo and the ramp at the aquarium, built and maintained by taxpayer dollars, is free to use. Now, the owners of commercial fishing and tour boats are not so favored. Their assessment is pegged at $1.50 per $100 assessed value. Over the years, Council has approved millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to dredge Lynnhaven Bay, Lynnhaven Inlet, and Rudy Inlet to provide navigable waterways free of charge to the pleasure boat community. Currently, the proposed operating budget identifies $1,634,000 for dredge maintenance. Also, the capital improvement budget lists 4 areas: $400,000 to dredge Rudy Inlet, $350,000 to dredge the confluence of east and west branches of Lynnhaven Rivers, $400,000 to dredge Rudy Inlet, and $700,000 to dredge the basin outside Rudy Inlet. The total is $1,725,000. I haven't been able to reconcile the difference between the operating budget and the CIP. Now, if this budget is approved, costs will again be foisted on all taxpayers to pay for dredging to keep waterways navigable for the pleasure boats in Virginia Beach. Those who don't have boats will be subsidizing those who do. And I think this is patently unfair to the citizens. Before he left office, the previous city manager cited dredging navigable waterways as a critical project in need of a steady funding source. Logically, this source should come from those who are benefiting from the dredging Enjoyment of navigable waterways by pleasure boat owners should not come at the expense of the majority of citizens without access to the pleasure. Now, the Virginia Violet, from time to time, has articles that effectively caution, if fees are levied, owners have simply moved their boats elsewhere. Well, where would they go? Albemarle Sound, more time on the road than in the water, to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, the Eastern Shore, with one-way tolls at $15, Gloucester or Poquoson, on the peninsula over the congested HRBT. I doubt it. It could be said that if the individuals want to go, let them go. No recompense to the city now, so zero sum lost.
Lisa Kubal, Stephen Johnston.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Kubat, and I am a career teacher. I have been teaching for 34 years. 30 of those years have been in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I have been a kindergarten teacher for the last 17 years, a half-day kindergarten teacher. That's 34 kindergarten classes. I have been responsible for the education and guidance of more than 700 kindergarten students. Some of these children were 4 years old, others barely 5, and a large percentage of my students have been and remain transient, since my school, as do many Virginia Beach schools, has a large military population. At my school, we are fortunate to be able to offer extended day kindergarten services to some students. However, my school is only able to offer EDK to only 15 out of approximately 120 students. EDK is offered to the children who would benefit most, those who begin the year with very low scores for kindergarten readiness. I have seen these children blossom because of this extra instruction. Every one of my students who received EDK services passed kindergarten and entered first grade ready to begin a successful year. They had received a full day of kindergarten instruction all year. Other students served only by the half-day program are not as fortunate. Many struggle through kindergarten, and they will struggle in first grade. And some children who enter kindergarten with more readiness skills begin to fall behind. Further, children who enter the school later in the school year cannot be offered EDK, no matter how much they may need it, because there's just no space in the class. Virginia Beach City Public Schools has a very challenging curriculum for kindergarten, and in the short time allotted for a half-day kindergarten, there is no time for teachers to offer the extra support and instruction these children need. Also, there is little time to give support to and challenge more advanced students. There is just no time. Teachers rush to cover the material included in the curriculum. Every day when my morning kindergarten students leave, I wish I had had more time with them, more time to discuss a story, to answer questions, to just listen when a child needs to be comforted or heard, more time to explore math concepts, more time to discover the wonders of science and learn about the world in which they live. The children don't have time to absorb information and reflect on what they have learned. We must move quickly on to the next skill and the next topic. When I started teaching, I taught first grade for 8 years. The skills I once taught to first grade children, I teach to my students today. Except the students are a year younger, a year less ready, and they only have a half-day program. Virginia Beach citizens have set high standards for their school system. These standards will be better met with full-day kindergarten program for all of the students. I hope the City Council and School Board can work together to fund this initiative. Thank you for giving me this time to speak to you.
Stephen Johnston and Kelly Walker.
Good evening. It's nice to see you all here together today. As most of you remember, I ran for school board last fall. Full-day kindergarten was an integral part of my campaign. Today, I'm here to ask you to vote against this resolution for full-day kindergarten because the ends do not justify the means. The school board budget started back in January and ended in March when the school board voted. In that 2-month period, not one member of the school board said publicly or at a school board meeting they were even considering full-day kindergarten. They did not invite the public comment. They did not invite anything other than their own personal opinions. And this is wrong. If the public had known they wanted full-day kindergarten, let alone asking for $14 million to pay for a program that's only going to cost $2 million next year, there would have been massive people showing up at the school board meeting opposed to this. The people need a voice. As you know, going to the merits of full-day kindergarten, yes, most of the children would benefit from it. But you need to remember, in Virginia Beach, all but 2 of our elementary schools are fully accredited. And those 2 have full-day kindergarten programs. So it's not an immediate need today. We can reject this today, send it back to the school board, have them hold proper public hearings, and let the public have a voice. It's not your job to have a voice and determine what the school board policy is. Make them do their job. Last fall, Beverly Anderson and myself were the only 2 candidates running for school board who actually voiced and advocated for full-day kindergarten. The voters spoke, and both of us finished second in our races. Last fall, the voters spoke clearly. They said no to full-day kindergarten, and they said no to light rail. Please listen to the voters, send this back to the school board, and have them have proper public hearings on it. Thank you.
Kelly Walker and Dan Blythe.
Hi, good evening, Vice Mayor Jones and City Council members. My name is Kelly Walker. I have 24 years experience as a classroom teacher, and I currently serve as the president of the Virginia Beach Education Association. The VBA represents thousands of professional educators who understand the importance of implementing full-day kindergarten in our schools. I am here this evening to share several reasons as to why full-day kindergarten is essential to the health and welfare of our city. Number 1, full-day kindergarten boosts the economy. Full-day kindergarten is a long-term investment in our future workforce, and therefore in our city's economic best interest. Studies on the economic and social impact of a strong early childhood education program completed by researchers Jill Walston and Jerry West in 2008 found that students in full-day classes learned more in both reading and mathematics than students in half-day classes. The study also found that all students experience learning gains, regardless of socioeconomic status. Students then who are successful in early childhood education programs tend to be successful in secondary education and eventually transition to the workforce with advanced skills. Second, full-day kindergarten improves students' social and emotional skills. Multiple studies show that children who attend both pre-K and full-day kindergarten, where high-quality professional educators have provided a full day of instruction, are positively influenced for the rest of their lives. College-educated professionals that provide high-quality instruction at a crucial phase of development gives all students, regardless of socioeconomic status, the ability to develop important social and emotional skills needed to be successful in school. While some parents worry that full-day kindergarten is too much, research then shows research shows that 5-year-olds are more than ready for a longer day. Third, full-day kindergarten will prepare students for the demands of first grade. The kindergarten class that you and I attended no longer exists. The kindergarten class of today demands that our children master skills that we had been introduced to in first grade. A full-day kindergarten program will provide the necessary time and structure a child needs to make a successful transition to first grade and beyond. Finally, access to full-day kindergarten programs for many families in Virginia Beach is not a reality. Through funding full-day kindergarten, the City of Virginia Beach will enhance the quality of education of its citizens, prepare our children for the demands of a globalized workforce, and ensure that the city remains competitive in attracting and retaining businesses. Implement full-day kindergarten for our children, for our city. Thank you.
Dane Blythe. William Jennings.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Dane Bly, and tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Virginia Beach Tea Party Budget Committee. Our committee makes the following recommendations: that City Council not vote for tax increases this year, including for full-day kindergarten. A lot of the research that we've done shows that any gains that are made are lost by the third grade. That's empirical evidence, and certainly if school board thinks that it is a priority, they can find the money that's available right now without having to raise taxes. City Council should not raise the stormwater fee. If it's done properly, we don't have to. City Council should vote for the budget changes proposed by Councilman Moss and Councilwoman Abbott. City Council should prioritize spending our hard-earned tax dollars on public safety, public schools, and public infrastructure, and act with a sense of urgency regarding stormwater drainage and flooding prevention. It can be done without raising taxes and fees. And I've followed these budgets for a number of years, and I will say this, especially if you are a member of a working family or come from the middle class, there's one man on this council who's going to look after you and you can trust, and that's Councilman John Moss.
Yeah. William Jennings and Diana Howard.
Honorable Vice Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager. My name is William Jennings. I live in Virginia Beach and Windsor Woods section on Gladstone Drive off of Old Forge and near Rosemont Road. Today, I walk my street and I talk to my neighbors, contractors, volunteer church groups, and others who are still working on their homes recovering from the flooding 6 months ago. On my street, 3 of my neighbors have not moved back into their homes. 7 more are still working on their homes while they are trying to live in them. My neighbor's daughter, who lives in Florida, talked with her mother on the phone after the flooding of her mother's home and said, "Mom, this flooding has cost you $100,000 in lost value of your home." My neighbor and my friend replied, "No, dear, you and your brother lost $100,000 in inheritance, and I've been here 34 years and I'm not going anywhere." Together, as you use your collective wisdom to decide what to do about the whole budget, and in particular the funding of all these stormwater programs, please consider the cost that the city has spent and therefore the taxpayers have paid for recurrent flooding. How many millions, or how many 2.5 cents, 3 cents, or how many nickels in equivalent residential units, ERUs, did the city and therefore the taxpayer actually spend on recurrent flooding events, and do not think about it in terms of pennies? If we all, as citizens, council, and manager, look at the value of putting our pennies together to rebuild our citywide stormwater infrastructure, we will realize that it will cost us less and we will mitigate the next flooding event. Ask a flooding victim how many 2.5 cents, 3 cents, or how many nickels of unreimbursed money have they spent on their recurring flooding. Ask these flooding victims if they would have paid 2.5 cents, 3 cents, or a nickel a day to have mitigated the severity of recurring flooding in their neighborhoods. Ask those who did not flood if they want their real estate property values negatively affected by the reduced sales price of more and more future homes, flooded homes in the marketplace. Damage to home values will come as the Virginia Beach flood maps are redrawn, higher flood insurance premiums required by law to shift more of the cost of premiums from the federal government to the homeowner of 15, 18, and 25% increase per year, making home purchases unaffordable in the marketplace. All these factors and others will cause a downward trend in the real estate values in Virginia Beach, as we saw back in 2009, affecting all homes. Smart buyers and banks and mortgage companies will start requiring air quality testing for microscopic mold and mildew as part of home inspectors' checklists before a bank or mortgage company will finance a buyer's purchase of a home in Virginia Beach. This will increase the cost of a home purchase and put downward pressure on home values. How long will the military tolerate their personnel not being able to get to the airbase down recurring flooded streets in Virginia Beach due to before it affects the military's mission readiness? Ask citizens if it's... Thank you. Thank you.
Diana Howard and Brittany Jones.
Good evening. My name is Diana Howard, and I'm the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party. And of course, we oppose raising taxes and fees because you're already getting a 1.8 cent increase in real estate taxes due to the increased assessments on our home, and you want to keep the light rail taxes, even though light rail has failed. Where would this budget be if light rail had passed? That was so important that you raised those fees, but now you want to keep them. This is my street during Hurricane Matthew. That's my husband standing in waders up to his thighs. I'm not asking for my neighborhood. My house didn't get flooded. But Councilman Morrison Abbott's budget prioritizes those neighborhoods that actually did have damage to their homes and puts them first, using the light rail funds for that. Please don't tell me that $30 million for a field house is more important than those homes. Please don't tell me that. Don't tell me that rerouting Atlantic Avenue is more important than those homes or having a maintenance facility at the beach. So don't do that. I want everybody here to read an article in the Virginia Living magazine called Eye on the Prize. In there, they talk about the elephant in the room, light rail. They have not forgotten about light rail. They want to keep those taxes, and they want to throw everything in that budget. They've got $6 million extra in the reserve contingencies, and they've padded every fund balance. Besides that, in that article, the city manager says the light rail referendum failure was a setback, a temporary setback, and the mayor says we're going to get it. Believe me, their eye on the prize has nothing to do with your neighborhoods, and it's all to do with the tourism.
Brittany Jones, William Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Jones, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving our city's greatest third graders at College Park Elementary School. Now, I may be biased, but I believe this is a direct result of the program that we have at our school, that is full-day kindergarten. We have found, that at the conclusion of our program, at least 98% of our students are reading at or above grade level. In the full-day program, our students get a double dose of language arts instruction, which means our educators get to instruct their standards and remediate their standards with the extra time. These students go on with a stronger sense of self and their abilities. And when they join my class, also known as 180 Days Until the SOL Test, the students are better prepared when armed with strong phonemic awareness skills. That means I don't have to teach them how to put their letter sounds together, but rather how to build meaning when they're reading. My school met accreditation standards last year after 4 years in school improvement. If we want to continue this trend, we need the time to do so. We need full-day kindergarten so that our students can continue to get the services and the remediation early on before coming to third grade and trying to do crisis prevention. Again, I ask that you please support full-day kindergarten. Thank you for your time.
William Bailey and Bob Elms.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hansen. I come before you this evening to support the budget presented by the city manager and support the additional staffing for police, fire, and EMS departments. I would like to thank you for your past efforts in building new fire stations, providing a fourth precinct, and adding additional ambulances for our citizens to keep our community safe. There are two additions I would like to see adjustments made in the budget. I'm requesting a 1% additional pay increase for city employees supporting our city and keeping it the greatest city in the world. With the surrounding communities receiving anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5% pay raise, we need to provide our employees with a comparable raise. We have supported each of you and stood by you in many cases for many years. We need your support to do it just a little bit better than the proposed increase, so we know you stand by and support your employees with more than just words. We're a team, and we're all in the business of making our city the best it can be. I ask you to stand with us as we continue to grow this city and make it better than ever before. Finally, last Tuesday, a fire captain spoke to you about a pay disparity that him and 11 other firefighters were impacted by. Those employees have suffered since 2004 and 2005, and I request you address this issue. The fire chief and his staff have been meeting with HR and are supportive of correcting this long-standing inequity. Your effort would end this issue forever and show those members of the city that we can fix a long-standing disparity. These folks have seen their peers and subordinates with less time in position and in service with the same skills make more than them for many years. I'm asking you and Mr. Hansen to please do what's right in the case of these 12 employees. It's a minimal investment in a $2 billion budget to do what's right, and doing what's right is priceless. Only you can fix this. These two issues are critically important to our 7,000 employees who every day provide the best service possible to our citizens, tourists, and taxpayers. Each of you has said how wonderful and professional these employees are publicly, whether it's flooding, tornadoes, or just backed up sewer drain. Our employees are doing whatever it takes to get the job done. We never say no or give a half-hearted effort. We go the distance to accomplish whatever needs to be done, and we need you to do the same. Now is time to show them that words matter. Action speaks louder than words, And I'm not asking you to give the employees a 4 or 5% pay raise. I'm asking you to just do a little bit better for those employees who are out there doing it every day. In real pocket money to an employee making $35,000 a year, it would make a significant difference. That's all I have to say this evening, and I thank you for listening. I hope I've impressed upon you the impact you can have on the lives of those employees who strive every day to make this city great. Thank you all very much.
Bob Elms and Mary Marchone.
Good evening, council members, Vice Mayor Jones, City Manager Hanson. I don't see Director Davenport here today, but if you could pass our thanks along to him too. Oh, is he here? Well, anyway, pass along to him thanks. If you allow me just a moment, I'd like to thank you for your hard work concerning this budget. For all of you, the stormwater portion of the budget has been and will continue to take much of your time and effort, along with the deep soul searching. This has not been an easy process for any of you. You have had to and will continue to have to consider feelings of those that flooded and those that are against increases in fees and taxes for any reason. Tonight, my name is Bob Elms. I'm the first Vice President of the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League, and I now represent the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League. We met last night in a special meeting. Excuse me, we'll go over that later. But anyway, the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League represents approximately 5,000 homes in the neighborhoods of Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza, or Rose Hall and Beach District. The area is impacted the most by the residential flooding from Matthew. In these two districts, there are residents that are still not close to moving back into their homes, and it is just a little over a week before we'll be 8 months out from this storm. Last night, the membership of the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League met in special meeting to consider all the options, 15-year, the 10-year, 2 options, and the 5-year as they have been presented. After the presentation was done, I was asked, which option did I favor? And I told them we're not here to consider which one I favored, but which option does the league membership want the city council to vote in favor of? After approximately 50 minutes of more questioning, the vote was taken, and 80% of those present were in favor of the 10-year option 2. We understand the city is not in favor of raising taxes or fees, and it's a hard decision to make. But consider this: no one is. Then consider what the fee increase is for. It is for all those listening tonight. I want all those listening tonight to understand that the fee increases for that is option 2, is for the safety and protection of all the residents of Virginia Beach. It will enable the Public Works to start all projects, and the stormwater.
Your time's expired.
Okay, all those in favor of stopping flooding now, please stand.
Mary Marchone and Yvonne Cord.
For the day, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Marchone, and I was stationed down here in 1992 by the U.S. Navy, and I've lived here ever since with my family and my husband, and I've loved it. Before I was stationed down here, I'm from Oroville, California. You may have heard of it. It's been in the news recently because they have a big dam above their town, and they got a lot of rain, and they didn't have their infrastructure in good order, and the dam nearly failed. This was just very recently in the news and almost, destroyed the town. Many people had to evacuate. Now, I was listening to my friends in Oroville complaining about the dam and about infrastructure and maintenance and Jerry Brown's bullet train. They all love that one. Well, it kind of hit home to me. because on October 9th, I had to bail out of my car in waist-deep water and try to get home on foot. I waded through blocks of water of houses where the water was already in the houses and the cars were already damaged. And I can't help but thinking that both Oroville, California and Virginia Beach, Virginia have the same problem. And that is we have delayed repairing and improving our infrastructure while allowing funding for projects that are not necessary. Nice, but not necessary. Light rail and Vibe is nice, but there's nothing like wading through 2 feet of water to sort your priorities out. Okay. Now, I loved Oroville, and I wanted to go back. I still would. I heard it's a real buyer's market right now. But, you know, I'm never going to go back because I don't trust the government to maintain the infrastructure anymore. And I don't want that to happen to Virginia Beach. We need to get our priorities straight. We need to fund and maintain and improve what we already have before we start funding nice projects. And I'd just like to thank you for your time and for listening to me. Thank you.
Yvonne Cord and Kenneth Cord, Jr.
Good evening. This is a picture that we took from our yard, and this is looking down Clubhouse Road to the rec center. And you can see that the water goes from the walls on this house to the walls on that house. It's like oceanfront, and it's just ridiculous. I'm here to speak about the stormwater and flooding issues and to implore you to find ways to get the problems fixed now, not years down the road. As you can see from this picture, Mother Nature has given us a huge wake-up call that you have ignored this problem for far too long. What I feel you don't seem to grasp is that the flooding we experienced back in October will have lifelong implications for those of us that were affected by the storm. Financial loss and destruction robs us of our livelihoods and some of us of our retirements. Our emotional well-being is affected because we are starting to exhibit PTSD from extreme worry that we will be experiencing this again in a short period of time, possibly before we get beyond the summer or this fall. We haven't even come close to finishing our repairs, and there's a real possibility that the progress that we've made will be stripped from us again. We are within 2 years of paying off our house, and we were forced to go back into a 30-year mortgage just so we can get our repairs done. We call foul because this didn't need to happen. We are not spring chickens, and this is the time of our lives when we should be able to reap the rewards of being good citizens and paying our way to have a great city. But that's not what's happening. Our money has been mismanaged and wasted instead of maintaining our infrastructure all as we went along. We have been told for years that you know how to spend our money better than we do, and yet we have nothing to show for it, and we are behind the 8 ball. You put out great advertisements to the nation and the world to come visit our great city, but when the flooding makes the national and world news showing what a mess we have, it doesn't bode well for us. Why would the tourists want to come here knowing that their vacation could be ruined with a simple rainstorm? We all know it doesn't take much to have a flooding incident. Month in and month out, we have to deal with this. It doesn't get any better, and it's not just the flooding. The mosquitoes are getting worse every year, and the city uses our yard, right over in here, to put their mosquito traps to see how bad the situation is. Within the last 2 years, we were informed that the West Nile mosquitoes were alive and well in our neighborhood. No doubt the backed up pipes and ponds are a big part of the problem. We can't even get in and out of our house without spraying the huge swarms that try to attack us when mosquito season gets in full swing. And then you have mold and stuff too on top of it. So it's not going away.
Kenneth Cord Jr. and Kenneth Cord III.
Good evening. Glad y'all could show up. This is Clubhouse Road looking the other direction, right around the corner from where Mrs. Jeffries lives. And right near that shrub, there's a fire hydrant under there somewhere. And like my wife said, it's ridiculous. Last night at the Princess Anne Civic meeting at Bow Creek Center to discuss proposals for the up-and-coming budget to fix a storm drainage that Princess Anne Plaza has been plagued with for far too many years. These proposals were done by the city manager, Mr. David Hanson, in all three proposals. These budgets were going to be paid for by increasing the stormwater management fees for $9 plus to as much as over $10, almost $11 every year for the next 5 years. And the amount depended on whether these were 5, 15, or 10-year plans. 15 years is way too long to fix a storm drain in the lakes, Windsor Woods, and Princess Anne Plaza. The one plan that we liked was the one to fix everything at one time. The rationale for this was that if it was done piecemeal, then once an area gets fixed, it's going to be affecting the other areas that haven't been fixed yet. It's like living in an apartment complex and spraying one unit for bugs, but not doing them all. It doesn't solve any problems. The next issue is who's going to pay for this. To regress a little bit, we've arrived at these flooding problems because when the storm infrastructure was put in place, apparently somebody decided that nothing more was needed. As a result, storm drains became clogged, broke, basically into disrepair due to negligence and lack of any regular maintenance. Now we're at the point where a lot of money is going to be needed to fix these issues. So who's going to pay for this? Mr. Hanson, in his proposals, has determined that the solution is to make the residents of Virginia Beach pay by adding it to the stormwater management bills for the next 5 years and increasing every year. This means that residents who don't even live anywhere near the areas that flood will be paying for the poor drainage in the areas that the city has been neglecting. With the city not doing any real maintenance, this makes you culpable for the situation we're in now. In other words, the homeowners are being asked to sacrifice out of their paychecks to fix the storm drain issues. But what is City Council sacrificing? Are you willing to cut back on some of your CIP so that this is not paid for on the backs of the residents? Why does it seem that when council wants something, and sometimes no matter what the cost, they'll vote for it no matter the opinions of the residents? You just voted to lend money to the developers of the Cavalier Hotel on Atlantic to finish a project. You found money for them to build a convention center. Why do we need another convention center when we already have one? I can remember when the excuse for the new convention was that this present and the old one did not fit into the needs, and it was old. And now we have a nice convention center that seems to fit the needs, and now we're helping a developer build another one. And then you gave concessions to his valet service to close off Atlantic Avenue.
Time has expired, Mr. Cord.
Thank you very much.
Kenneth Cord III, Cheryl Turpin.
I really don't have anything new to add, really. Miss Jeffrey said it. My parents said it. I've woken them up. And now that they see this, hey, y'all's arrogance to not fix this is going to be your Achilles heel. I really don't care. But some of the things that people are not bringing out, which I have not heard, is what happens when this happens again and people have to take out another another claim in their insurance. Eventually, the insurance is going to be like, you know what, you guys keep doing this every daggone year. Guess what? Your premiums are going to go up. And someone else mentioned that their premiums are going to go up like 10, 15, 20% and all. It's not going to get any better. You guys are wasting the money on stupid pet projects like the Arena Light Rail, which coincidentally, Diana, you happen to prove me right. I did not see that article. And I said, and I could have said it to one of the other meetings when the light rail crap was going on, but I've said it to numerous people that I've come into conversation with. We're going to get this light rail no matter what, because you guys made a mention on the local news way back then that, oh, well, even if this referendum fails, as far as you guys getting your project, doesn't mean we're going to necessarily follow it. And there you go. I'm not stupid. When I say stuff, I'm saying points. I'm not talking out of my neck or anything like that. This is ridiculous. And this $2 million to up front, and then, oh, we're going to do it a few years down the road, that's an insult.
an insult, because after that $2 million, it's going to go like that, but after that, we have to reallocate another $2 million, and that's not necessarily a guaranteed $2 million for the next year. It's a joke.
Cheryl Turpin and Virginia Wasserberg.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Jones and members of the City Council. I am here before you today as a longtime public school educator. I am asking you to please fully fund pre-K, full-day kindergarten. In full-day kindergarten, classrooms, teachers get more time to know their kids and identify and address their learning challenges early, saving money and resources over the long time and addressing the odds that children will be successful later in school. Full-day kindergarten is also cost-effective. Investments in quality early childhood programs generate returns of 3 to 1 or even higher, which translates to $3 saved for every $1 invested. An early investment in children's social, emotional, and intellectual skills means that lower grade retention and dropout rates for students later in life. So again, I'm asking you today to please fully find the funding necessary for full-day kindergarten. Thank you.
Virginia Wasserberg, Jesse Wasserberg. He is here, thank you. Well, go ahead, I called his name, he can come next. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I would like to tell you a little story. On the evening of October the 8th, 2016, 3 young men in their early 20s, the triplet sons of Joe Soboto, who reside at 4001 Mintwood Court, were faced with an uncertain future. One of the brothers, the youngest, is severely disabled and cannot walk. As streets and yards began to flood on October the 8th, 2016, this youngest brother's caretaker aide fled to safety. The aide, before departing, placed the young man into his medical bed and raised the bed to its highest level to keep him safe. As water entered the home, it shut down the electronics of the medical bed, and the bed automatically lowered. The older brothers were desperate. They set alarms on their cell phones at 1-hour intervals and spent the rest of that fateful night taking turns every hour to check on their youngest brother to make sure he had not drowned in the floodwaters of Hurricane Matthew. This story is real. It is factual. It is a horrific reality that we, the residents of Virginia Beach, face, and that reality is the emergency situation of flooding. Because of the failures of councils past, we question who we can trust to do their part to protect our lives and property. We know we must do all in our power to protect ourselves, and this is a tragedy. But it is a tragedy that you have the power to change. You have the ability to make a difference in our lives and leave a legacy to this city that we can trust in. I plead with you to come together as a council on these budget proposals from the city manager and Mr. Moss and Ms. Abbott and resolve how to fully fund a stormwater management program that not only keeps water out of my house, but out of the house of these brothers and others like them. You have the power to change this city for the good. You have the power to act sooner rather than later. You have the power to stop the flooding now. So please, on May the 9th, make a vote for the people of Virginia Beach and vote yes to fully fund stormwater drainage projects citywide. Thank you.
Jesse Wasserberg and Jerry Wasserberg.
Thank you for having me.
I just want to thank you all for all your hard work and service. I know it's difficult balancing life and family, and certainly being in the public eye and having a essentially thankless job, which I think we've seen here tonight. So I just thank you for your service. Secondly, I want to just call us to be unified as residents of Virginia Beach, as neighbors of Asheville Park or Windsor Woods. We are all residents of Virginia Beach, including the people up on the dais. We all have the same problem, and that is flooding. Like Mr. Jennings talked about, if flooding continues, property values are going to go down. They're not going to go down in just one neighborhood. That's going to be spread across the entire city. So if we don't do something about that soon, we're all going to be affected. So I just call everyone to let's focus on taking care of this flooding problem. Another way that we're unified that you might not realize is apparently we are all stormwater drain inspectors, which I don't know how many of you guys knew that. I just found out about that recently myself, that I was a stormwater drain inspector. Lived there since 1993. I never knew that. But apparently, if we don't report that there is a stormwater drain issue, those don't get taken care of. That is our current stormwater maintenance plan, which is not a maintenance plan. It's just a way to react to stormwater. Now, I don't know guys about you, but if my faucet's not working, I can certainly report that. But how do I know that a stormwater drain isn't working until the floodwaters start rising? This is an unacceptable plan. We need to be more proactive. We need to have a comprehensive inspection and maintenance plan. And you could argue that we have these giant CIPs on the books right now. You could argue if we had been doing a better job of maintenance from the past 10 years, that this would not be such a huge problem today. And I've heard talk of, maybe we should put it off for a couple of years. Well, what's putting it off for a couple of years going to do besides make this an even worse problem? We've put it off for far too long. It's time to take care of this now. Stop the flooding now. Thank you.
Jerry Wasserberg, Betty Warren.
I'm Jerry Wasserberg, the third of the Wasserbergs, I guess. I don't really have anything to say that you haven't already heard. I have thought about my experience here in Virginia Beach. I moved here 23 years ago and became aware of flooding on South Plaza Trail the day 23 years ago when there was a heavy enough rain. There was so much traffic on Virginia Beach Boulevard, I was trying to find a cut through. And I had a car, we called it the Brown Bomber. It was this giant Chevy station wagon, and I had water coming over the hood, but I made it home. I never really thought a lot about the flooding again until I moved to South Plaza Trail about 10 years ago. But I live in the part of the trail which really is up away from the flooding. So again, I didn't really think very much about it until my kids moved 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, to where they are on Old Forge and South Plaza Trail. And I tried to reassure them the first few times, oh, the water it won't come into your house. And then October 8th, the water came into the house. And so I kind of went from, it's terrible what's happening, to, wow, I really need to be more involved. And the fact that I have known about this for 23 years, I bet I'm not the only one who knew about it for 23 years. And whatever has contributed to that having been a factor 23 years ago has not been taken care of since. And all I can say is we need to have a plan where we're going to do something sooner rather than later. And the Constitution talks about the #1 job of the federal government is to defend its citizens. And I would just simply suggest that your job is to defend the citizens of Virginia Beach from flooding again.
Betty Warren, Joseph Sabetta.
Good evening, councilmen and women. My name is Betty Warren, and I'm from the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League. I'm the president. The first vice president has already spoken to you and given you all the information concerning the flooding in our particular area. We have approached the council a number of times before, and we're still in the same position that the previous speakers have already described. We're still underwater, and the drains are still clogged, and we're still flooding. And now it's down to a critical area where it's a life-threatening situation. I urge all of you to please consider acting immediately, not 5 years from now, 10 years, or 15. And I would also like to thank Councilwoman Kane for coming out to the wetlands in the backyards. That's what we have in Windsor Woods. Pretty soon, we will have all of the ducks and all of the birds that use water in our yards, because that's where they are, because there's no drainage, because we still have the water left every time it rains, because all of the drains are either clogged and cannot take the water flow. I thank you, and I'll yield the balance of my time to someone from Princess Anne Plaza Civic League.
Devon Maloney. This is the second call for Devon. Mr. Sabetta has said he declined speaking. MC Murden and Gibbon McHeels.
Good evening, and it's MC Munden. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I just wanted to concur with everyone that's spoken about. We've got to go with the floodwater and not the ocean front. It's got to be the home front and not the ocean front. That's really what you're hearing here, and that's what Cape Story by the Sea, Todd Solomon and MC Munden have been out there in those ditches. And Mr. Hanson, thank you so much for the folks that have helped us with that. We finally got a sluice that we'll see how that works. I checked it out yesterday. It's up by Hot Tuna. This has taken since Nor-Ida. And you think back, when was Nor-Ida? That was when we got flooded, and that was when this started. It's taken that long. We're talking 2009, I believe. So it takes a while. No, it's later than that. Anyway, there are 4 points I want to make to council tonight. One is that the budget money really needs to go to the infrastructure, to the rebuilding of the pipes, drains, failing infrastructure, pump stations, flood water control, all of it we've got in Cape Story, which is not even close to what these people have been describing where they're coming from with the flood water. We are very lucky in Cape Story by what I'm hearing tonight. You people are really underwater, and I mean that in both ways. Sorry, Councilman Oren, we need to go from the beachfront, which I absolutely love, to the home front. And thank you for doing the audit on the stormwater. I kind of wonder where those fees go, so thank you for the council folks that I think Councilman Wood and maybe Abbott did the Kane did the audit, and I think you appreciate that. And there are several of you, Davenport and Wood and Dyer and I think Abbott, that you're right on the front. I mean, your citizens are who are going underwater. You're the ones that are the people sitting here tonight and speaking tonight are in trouble. The infrastructure needs to be taken care of, and the let's see, that was the infrastructure, yeah. So, and we need to just get the floodwater under control and do the floodwater things that we need to do to keep that now and not 5, 10, 15 years. That needs to be on the front burner. The arena, the hotels, they can wait. We're going to have people coming down here all summer long. That bay is full tonight. Let me tell you, every restaurant on Shore Drive is filled. So, tax money's coming in there. I also have a couple of things that I would like for you to consider that's kind of out of the box thinking with the budget. Number one, I do believe that the office of the Commissioner of Revenue could be encompassed in the City Treasurer's office. It would get rid of an office, it would fill vacancies in both offices, and it would be, I think, less red tape to go from point A to point B. So my suggestion would be to consider encompassing the Commissioner of Revenue into the Treasurer's office. Another point is that I live on the bay, and I watch the big city trucks with 4 to 6 guys in it come across that Oak Street entrance every morning, every day. And I would say that from Memorial Day to Labor Day, they could probably, unless there's some other reason, could cut that back to less.
Expired. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Gwen McKeels and Chris Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. I am also going to discuss about the floodwaters and the storage drain issue. I've been a resident in Witch Duck Landing since 1987. What happened to us during Matthew was nothing compared to some of these subdivisions, and I'm fortunate enough to say that my house was one of the 10 that did not have water in front of it during the storm, but now I am going to be paying the price for the storm. My house is sinking. Every day, every week, another section of the floor buckles. Mind you, I had brand new floors put in the week before the storm hit, and now I'm going to have to replace them after the house is raised. And another thing to think about with this, yes, that's difficult for us to have to deal with, but this flood drainage thing is a road issue as well. 2 weeks ago, Thursday morning, I'm sitting eating breakfast, and I hear this just absolutely god-awful sound outside on Witch Duck Road. And I run out my back door, jump up on the deck, try to see what I could see, because it sounded like somebody really had a serious accident. I didn't see anything because of the fences and the trees. I go to work a little while later, and I see a guy standing on the corner of Kellam and Witch Duck with his hands on his hips and a piece of big metal laying on the sidewalk just before it. Here he had a huge dump truck that the sides come off on. He hit a bump right at a drainage ditch. It knocked the side off the truck into the left-hand lane of Witch Duck Road, mind you. There could have been another car there. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. Somebody stopped, helped him move it off. He was waiting for somebody to come lift it back onto his truck. I did a request to have that section fixed. They patched it. 3 days later, it collapsed. What I'm asking you tonight, as well as thinking of what to do with the budget on the storm drains and the flooding, that does need to be taken care of now. Drive down Aragona Boulevard, 20 miles an hour, and see how many ripples are in the road. The same thing on Witch Duck Road. Make sure you're in the right-hand lane up against where the storm drains flow into. You will see the divots every so often. They pop up every week somewhere else. It's a continuing problem. So we really need to think about this now. It's not just our homes that are being destroyed, but it's our roadways as well. Somebody could seriously get hurt, and it could be the city's responsibility for that. Thank you.
Chris Brown and Bill Sweeter.
Good day, Council. It's really sad hearing some of the stories here that people came up and spoke about. It really seems like the city is stuck on transit-oriented development, not family-oriented development. The families here in Virginia Beach are struggling right now, and to raise a tax, a stormwater fee, when obviously the stormwater system has been neglectful in maintaining the drains. Not only that, the stormwater is being audited right now. I would see it'd be foolish to raise the taxes before we can see how those are being used. Further, for this to not be addressed into 15 years is really unacceptable. I'm a realtor and a property manager, so I fully understand the havoc water can do to a property and what also it does to value. And even when the homeowner decides that, well, my home's flooded, and I bought my home in 08, and it's currently not only literally underwater, but financially on the water, they can't just sell it. So they have to rent it. But then you got a renter in the home that they have to deal with these issues too. So it's not an easy fix, but it's something that needs to be addressed right away. So that's why I came here to support the Moss Abbott budget proposal that would make critical repairs without raising the taxes on the family and making their situation more difficult than it is. So thank you very much and take care.
Bill Sweeter. You. And John Richardson.
My name is Bill Sweeter. Hello, John. I'm a member of the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League, and I've been a homeowner in Windsor Woods since 1969. And my bride of 52 years and I have enjoyed living in Windsor Woods. We have seen it flood quite a few times. We've had water up in the driveway, but never in our house until October the 8th. 10 days before that date, I wrote a check to FEMA for $1,821, And I called them just before I wrote the check, and I said, you know, this thing has really gone up since the previous year. And he said, well, you have to understand, it's going to go up another 16% next year, and then basically every year after that. And that got my attention, especially after October the 8th. We suffered $74,000 worth of structural damage. We're in a two-story. Thank God our kitchen was upstairs. On the other hand, my granddaughter, who lives with us and goes to TCC, we had to move everybody upstairs. It was a little bit crowded, but we made out. The interesting thing is that about 6 weeks ago, our contractors finished with the repairs in the downstairs, and we went out and started buying furniture to be able to refurnish that portion of the house. But the comment that the FEMA people made to me, I whipped out a calculator and I took my 1831 and I started multiplying by 116%. And I did that for 5 years. Well, I'm in my 70s, like a lot of people. I'm retired, and I'm living on pretty much a fixed income. I won't be able to live in my house by 2020. I can't afford it. It has to be more than 12% of my income. I won't be able to sell it for what I was hoping to sell it for. And a lot of my neighbors are in the same situation. Now, I must admit that the lower portion of my house is almost brand new. The upstairs isn't. All the furniture I had to pay for out of pocket. And like a lot of these folks, I didn't have a mortgage. And I still don't. But a lot of my retirement savings went into that. So please be advised that one of the most critical things that a large portion of our population faces as we get into those retirement years is how can we afford to retire? And that's what I'm concerned about. Please do the things that need to be done. We're all responsible. It's not just city council. I mean, we're all responsible. So please take up the banner and do it. Thank you.
John Richardson and Leslie Jones.
Vice Mayor Jones, members of council, my name is John Richardson. I'm a local attorney. I represent the Atlantic Shores Cooperative Association Board of Directors. They've asked me to express their concerns tonight about any increase in the taxes upon senior citizens who reside at Atlantic Shores on Dam Neck Road. It's a community of over 500 people. And as the gentleman before indicated, the folks there are retirees and live on fixed incomes as well. So they're just concerned about any additional tax burden and ask that be considered. Thank you.
Teresa Lang and Leslie Jones.
Hi, my name is Teresa Langell, and I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight and the City Council for coming out as well. Fix that. I've been listening to this, and my story is kind of the same. On October 8th, we weren't expecting Matthew. We'd actually been in North Carolina and rushed home so that we could miss the weather down there. And when I got up that morning, I came downstairs and my husband said, go back up and put your shoes on. Our whole downstairs was flooded. At the same time, we had found out that our health care costs had gone up. Our deductible had gone way up, and my husband in January had knee replacement, so we were looking at that, what it was all going to cost. I've been listening to this, and I had a couple points. One is no increase in taxes for this. Back in, I think, the late 1980s and early 1990s, we had a really, really bad rainstorm, and some storm fees were already collected for that. 2 years ago, property taxes were raised. Every time I come here, and it's only been a few times, I'm here begging not to have our taxes raised. You collect plenty already. I hear about the arena, I hear about the hotels, and by the way, my sister-in-law came down from New England to see our new downstairs. And, you couldn't see Atlantic Avenue. You couldn't see the ocean from Atlantic Avenue. You had to peek between hotels. She didn't like that at all. So maybe she'll go to Carolina Beach, where my son lives. I also think that we should prioritize spending. That kind of touches on that. You know, I don't buy entertainment centers, I don't buy new rugs, I don't do all that if my sewage in my home isn't working or I've got a roof leak. City of Virginia Beach has a flooding problem. So I don't do all that. And I don't think even 3 years, our hurricane season is coming up. There's no time. If this happens again, we were fortunate. We had flood insurance. It was recommended to us. At first we had to have it, but then they said we didn't have to. We chose to keep it. So we had flood insurance, and we were able, after going through the bureaucracy of FEMA, because you have to work with them anyway, it took about 2.5 months just to get our insurance to go through. In our court, 5 homes were affected, 9 vehicles. Thank God we kept full coverage on our truck. So that was fixed. So I think we need to prioritize spending and also stop collecting money for projects like light rail when you don't have the authority to go ahead with it yet.
Your time is expired.
Thank you.
Leslie Jones and Peter Nixon.
Well, a city for a lifetime. It should just be that. My name is Leslie Jones, and I've lived in Virginia Beach since 1961. I went to Louis Luxford School. I remember walking to school. I lived just down the street. The 7-Eleven across the street is no longer there. The building is, but the 7-Eleven has moved over the other side. But I have memories of riding my bike all over Aragona, all over Virginia Beach. And so, ladies and gentlemen on this stage, the budget should reflect the vital needs of the city's constituents. Therefore, it is my responsibility to express my thoughts to you this evening. The council should reprioritize its CIP and budget to reflect the most important issues facing us first. Those 3 things are infrastructure, safety, and schools. If the enthusiasm by the council and others who want light rail was as great for remediation of flooding, it would get done, and it would be done quickly. The remainder of the proposed plans that are not priorities can be funded after those 3 important issues are met, with revenues already being collected from us. Others have spoken before you this evening. I am now asking you to support the Moss-Abbott budget proposal. I hope you will listen to us. Thank you very much.
Peter Nixon and Al Wallace.
Vice Mayor Jones, City Council members, Mr. Hanson, my name is Peter Nixon. I'm a lifelong resident of Virginia Beach. I have business property in Virginia Beach. I have represented the seafood industry in Richmond since the early 80s. I'm a commercial fisherman. I have a partner. We have 700 acres of oyster bottom in Lynn Haven, and water quality issues are a priority of mine, and they have been for a number of years. I've worked closely with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and Lynn Haven River Group for water quality improvement in Lynn Haven. Back in the late 90s, I was appointed by then Governor Wilder to serve with Nancy Parker, former city councilwoman in Virginia Beach, on a committee called the Regulations Review Committee on the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. Consequently, I became privy to a lot of information that was available to folks who were involved in the preservation of Chesapeake Bay water quality since then. One thing that came across my desk, came in the mail one day back in the very early 90s, was a mandate by the EPA that the Bay watershed localities design, develop, and implement a stormwater utility system to process stormwater before it goes back overboard into the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries and remove sediments and pollutants before that happens. In order to fund that, the localities were then given the permission to institute a stormwater fee. That's where all this started. I don't think there's a lot of people now that understand where this originated, but it's not for the management of stormwater, moving it from A to B. It's for filtering the stormwater before it goes into the estuaries and then into the Chesapeake Bay. Since that time, the locality here of Virginia Beach has collected close to, by my rough calculations, I almost had to get a Freedom of Information Act request to find out the complete funding, close to $1 billion. And I want to know, after collecting $1 billion, where's our stormwater utility system? Where'd all that money go? I've called and talked to a lot of people over the last number of years, and nobody could seem to give me an answer. If you remember, a few years ago, the stormwater fees were raised because the fund was rated by council to balance the budget one year. So the fees had to be raised after that to make the fund whole again. So that's why the rate is what it is now. What has happened since then? Nothing. We still don't have a stormwater utility. I support Councilman Moss and Councilwoman Abbott's proposal to have this be a capital improvement project and not come out of stormwater fees. And I would like to see the stormwater fees go to where they're supposed to go, and let's start cleaning up the stormwater before it runs overboard. I'm done.
Al Wallace and Melody Lubick. We're going to try.
Well, here we are. Good evening, Vice Mayor Lewis Jones, members of City Council and City Manager. I'm Al Wallace, and I live right next door to Bayside High School. When I moved here in 1990, within several years, I've seen Haygood Road flooded out, and then I saw high school students go out and help drivers of the car, pushing the cars out of the way. That I knew that was very dangerous. That I went to then the mayor, Myra Oberndorf, and I can see that I had to initiate another action, and that was deal with Public Works directly. And that was quite successful because we see a lot of upgrades in this area that I don't see Haygood Road flooded out as much. But it was pretty scary when Haygood Road flooded out. I saw the rising water come up on my lawn and very close to the backside of my house. And I knew I had to initiate action, so that's why I went directly to Public Works. And then when Hurricane Sandy came along, underneath my house was a lake that I went to the planning department, and basically they said, well, what do you expect? We have many, many ditches in this area in order to drain and for development. And I said, well, okay, so be it, but what can I do? And I must say, I appreciate the assistance from the city engineers in helping me to design and install the sump system in the crawl space and the French drain around my perimeter of the property, of the house. So I just feel The other thing I heard was from the city people is it's a CIP project to make improvements to the stormwater. CIP. And I'm very shocked to hear $1 billion spent for stormwater management, although that's a misuse of the term. Should be the utility system. But here again, that's an awful lot of money, and the members of the City Council is responsible for management audit of programs. And I'm asking this City Council to take a look at what is causing the flooding situation such that since 1990, it's been told, CIP project, why hasn't the flooding issue been mitigated way back then? And there was a lady that even described the situation back in 1970. So we are well aware of the flooding situation in this area that I'm asking City Council, City Manager to take another look at what the proposal from John Moss. Tell me that what is wrong with the proposal from John Moss. Thank you.
As soon as he fixes the microphone. Melody Lubbock, Richard Engel,
Good evening, Council. I would like to thank each and every one of you for listening to your residents' stories. And I would really ask for your responsible decision-making when it comes to the upcoming budget. My name is Melody Lubitsch, and my house was flooded in October for the 3rd time. I had knee-deep water in every room. This time was the worst. I lost all of my furniture, my vehicle, and my 2 pets. The damage was so severe that I had to be out of my house for 6 months for the repairs. In the past, when I've been flooded, I've been told, well, this was a 100-year reign. These 100-year reigns have been occurring about every 3 years, and they're getting worse. The city financed a week's stay for me in a hotel for 1 week, but that did not help for the other 23. Several of my neighbors have still not returned to their homes. Usually during severe weather, my home is the only one that floods. This time, most of my neighbors were hit as well. When everyone had their furniture out on the lawns to be thrown away, I called the city manager's office, hoping that he would come to witness the devastation and the destruction in our neighborhoods. The phone call was left unanswered and ignored. As a resident of Virginia Beach, it is very disheartening to think that council is looking for funding of light rails and arenas when there have been so much suffering of the city's residents?
Ma'am, your time has expired.
I would encourage you to do the right thing in your voting. Thank you.
Richard Engel and Jim Tuss.
Good evening. My name is Richard Engel. I live on Old Forge Road, about a block north of South Plaza Trail. I came here in the military in 1977, purchased my home, was able to raise my children in one school system, not the 13 that I attended in 12 years when I was an Air Force brat growing up. I love Virginia Beach, the school systems. In fact, all of my children and their spouses are teachers. In October, at 4 in the morning, the water stopped rising, 1 inch from coming inside my house on the bottom floor. My garage was underwater. Everything that was out in the garage was floating about quite freely. And when I opened my garage door to go out and check my automobiles, some fine fellow citizen with a high-wheel pickup truck decided to make wake and wash right inside my garage. Didn't go in the house, but hey, that's the way it is. You got jerks everywhere, it seems. All of my neighbors were inundated. They lost their furniture. One day, a week or two after the flood, I drove down Old Forge Road from Rosemont up to my house. I counted over 80 homes where you could look through the house, and it was obviously empty. There was no window treatment in place. You could see right through the backyard fence and the neighbor's house. There were pods in the front yard. There was wreckage on the curb. Now, I'm a veteran of Lebanon and Beirut. I saw wreckage. This reminded me of it quite a bit. I'm the kind of guy that when I get called for jury duty, I get voir dired off the panel almost immediately. Because I believe in evidence. When I see evidence and it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, guess what my verdict is going to be? It is a duck. And I'll pluck that sucker and eat him for breakfast. And that's what I'll do, because you all have been charged with being in governance over the city of Virginia Beach. But I'm not seeing evidence to support that. And a lot of us are going to act accordingly and reward you at the polls.
Jim Schnunkelberger, James Taylor. Are you Mr. Schnunkelberger? Mm-hmm.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jim Schellenberger. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. Until yesterday, I saw something in the news that this was happening. And what got my attention was the full-time kindergarten proposal, which sounds good and everything, until I saw the proposal is using to raise our property tax. And first of all, if you see this room, this auditorium is empty for the most part. And I'll bet the reason it's empty is there's working people out here like me that they don't know this is happening tonight. And if they did, they'd probably be here if they knew their taxes was going to be raised. And I bet if you went door to door to all the Virginia Beach residents and told them that you're looking at raising their property tax they'd probably shut the door in your face and tell you to figure it out on your own and use the money you already have. But like I said, that's not, I think the consensus here tonight is we don't want our taxes raised. We want you to go back and rethink about what you're doing, look at your current budget and work within it. We're kind of tired of getting our taxes raised, like the last person said, the last 2 years. But anyway, about kindergarten, my children attended Virginia Beach Kindergarten, and you know what? They went half day and they learned to read, and I was blown away by that. Now, I don't know what people are expecting out of kindergarten, but I hear some of these school teachers like they're going to come out of kindergarten with doctorate degrees. And I'm pretty impressed that my children came out reading. My generation, I remember taking naps and playing in the playground. And I was, we all turned out pretty well from my generation. The other thing I hear these school teachers bring up a lot of good things. It sounds like a lot of citations. They're citing a lot of sources, but I didn't hear them cite the sources. They throw out a lot of information, but I don't hear any sources cited, where they're getting that from. You can't tell me that just by word of mouth, without proven facts, that it's going to work. I don't even know what the end goal of full-time kindergarten would be. I guess my conclusion is any budget, we just ask that you work within your budget you have. As far as full-time kindergarten as well, I heard a school teacher say that it's so important to spend time with these school teachers. How about these kids spend some time with their parents at home?
Your time has expired.
We want to turn this full-time kindergarten into another daycare and extend the daycare so these two working families don't have to spend time with their children. Thank you very much.
James Taylor, Robert Dean.
Good evening. This is the second time I've been up here about this flooding situation. The City Council seems to have their priorities focused in a much wrong direction. They seem to be more interested in providing taxpayer money funding to their development buddies, giving our money away for projects we really don't absolutely need. What we really need is the people of Virginia Beach being taken care of. And the big thing right now taken care of is the flooding thing. My house was flooded with over 2 feet of water inside. I've got over $90,000 worth of damage. Why? We've been paying. I moved to Virginia Beach in 1983. I'm retired from the city of Virginia Beach. I started working with the city council under Bob Jones when he was still mayor. So I know a little bit about what's going on with the city council. And I've asked before to get a funding release information of all the storm water money that has been taken in by the city of Virginia Beach. Not just the stuff that's on the way they're taking it in now, but from the day one the city of Virginia Beach started collecting storm water funding money, and what has happened to that on a yearly basis. Where did all that money go? I still have not seen that report. I know some people are working on it, but still it has not been made public. We need to know where the money's already gone in stormwater funding and why we are still flooding. That's basically all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Robert Dean and Fran Sansone.
Good evening. My name is Robert Dean. I have been a resident of Virginia Beach for the last 56 years, and in my current home for the last 37 years. So I've been around the block a few times, and during those excursions, I've developed a keen sense of what makes people tick. But now, after hearing the comments made by our Vice Mayor, Louis Jones, and Benjamin Davenport, I'm faced with an enigma. I propose this rhetorical question to Mr. Jones. Did you actually state for the record that if the stormwater plan offered by City Council members Moss and Abbott was approved, it would essentially shut down the city? Did you really infer that our bond rating could be negatively affected? Did you actually state something to that effect during the council's informal session? Unless the video has been modified, you should be ashamed for making those statements. Just so I understand your rationale, if the LIRAIL referendum had passed and the same funding mechanism that the Moss-Abbott proposal is using to produce flooding relief was going to be used for the construction of light rail and purchasing the choo-choo cars, then why didn't you wave the red distress flags, Mr. Jones, and shout to your council members that the city is going up in flames and total destruction is just around the corner? But you didn't, because you knew it wasn't true, just as any sane person would know it isn't true about the alternate stormwater relief plan. Mr. Jones, I'm not sure why you are turning your back on the hardworking citizens that you are expected to represent. But you have and you are. And if you vote against the Moss-Abbott stormwater flooding relief proposal, you are essentially slapping these homeowners in the face that still haven't completed the renovations caused by the decades of neglecting our stormwater system. You and Nero have something in common, but I'm not sure if you know how to play the fiddle while our homes are flooding like he did when Rome was burning. Turning my attention to Mr. Davenport, I have watched your performance since you took your seat on council, and I must say I'm impressed as to how much you believe you know. For you to accuse John Moss of political grandstanding on the flooding relief proposal went way over the top, even for someone like yourself who believes he can constantly attempt to belittle Councilman Moss. Your knowledge of financial numbers pales in comparison to the vastness of what John Moss oversees on a daily basis, with infrastructure and personnel numbering nearly 7 times that of our city's operations. Anyone who attempts to impugn Mr. Moss surely must be on the level of a deity. Mr. Davenport, I know John Moss, and you're no John Moss.
Fran Sansone and Reed Grenham. Fran Sansone, Reed Grenham.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In my few minutes here, I could reiterate the pleas of my fellow Windsor Woods neighbors and other storm victims. Again, highlight the dollar amounts of storm damage that wasn't covered by insurance and necessitated loans just to become close to being whole again. But to coin a phrase, that's water under the bridge, not water covering the bridge, but it's still there. I would rather focus on asking council to use the taxes that were collected for light rail for flood mitigation CIPs, not to hit citizens with additional stormwater fee increases or real estate increases, tax increases. And if you do, make it minimal as you possibly can, and use it specifically for flood CIPs. You need to find solutions to the drainage problems now, not 10 or 15 years down the line. Council persons Moss and Abbott came up with a plan to get things done happening within 6 years. Please don't poo-poo it. There's something we all instinctively know about this area. There's also scientific evidence that you can obtain from the ODU and other researchers on this. Flooding has steadily and dramatically been on the rise in Hampton Roads and the entire Atlantic seaboard. Studies have shown that the sea level has risen about 13 inches since gauges were installed about 90 years ago throughout the seaboard, and about half of that rise is attributed to sinking land, known as subsidence, which we have a problem with that here because we're on an aquifer, not bedrock. And it was written in one of these studies that this region of Virginia is second only to New Orleans as the largest population at risk from sea level rise, a population risk that doesn't include tourists coming here either. That's just the population of our city. If the water level predicted for a superstorm Sandy coming through our area is even close to being correct, We'll need that arena, or at least the roof, because it was predicted 13 feet of water. 13 feet of water covering the area, not just Windsor Woods or Asheville, the area. That's what's predicted, and it's in some of the studies, and Mr. Jennings is well aware of that, and we can come up with the information if you would like that, to look at it specifically, not just me talking about it. In closing, I won't ask you to look for reasonable ways to fund and mitigate drainage solutions. You have fellow council members who have done that. I ask you to seriously and honestly support the funding, support the timeline, and you may very well find that you have citizen support for pet projects once the core well-being of your citizens is taken care of. Thank you.
Graham and Mary Taylor Castelloso.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Reed Greenman. I live in the Ocean Lake section of the city. As a footnote, living in Sandbridge, my house was flooded on a regular basis, over and over. And each storm, I would put sandbags all around my home to try to protect my property as best I can. I feel for the stories that you people have told here tonight. It's stunning. It's stunning that the City Council hasn't actually done their job, and yet at the same time, they talk about frivolous waste with our money. I've seen it for years, and I just have a difficulty understanding it. I had a speech. I read this operating budget. I'm a member of the Tea Party Budget Committee. We went through every page of this. We went through the CIP. I had all kinds of remarks. You know what? I'm not going to go into it because it doesn't matter. Without 8 votes on City Council, nothing anyone says in this room, excuse me, 6. I was thinking of a gang of 8, you're right. It takes 6 votes to make a difference. And folks have told you since the 70s this place has been flooding, and you haven't done your job. And now you're talking about raising taxes and fees on things that should have been taken care of. You know what impressed me tonight was interesting? It's funny the juxtaposition of talking about kindergarten and talking about people's homes being devastated and talking about a budget that talks about arenas and building things for Bruce Thompson's Cavalier Hotel and endless light rail type projects. Your priorities are messed up, and I've been here year after year after year begging you to get your priorities in order, and now you're reaping what you've sowed. You should be embarrassed and ashamed, those of you that have been on council a long time, for what you heard here tonight. But you know what? I don't think you are. It's just business as usual. And after tonight, and you go through the motions of this, you're just going to continue on, as one person mentioned, Diana Howard, light rail, had a bump in the road. We're going to continue to do that. Urban development, or transit-oriented development, as Mr. Brown mentioned. This doesn't matter to you. Do you realize the impact on people's homes because you didn't do your job? Do your job. Enough with the tax increases. I stand in support of Councilman Moss and Councilman Abbott's plan. Even 6 years is too long. 15 years, slush funds, frittering the money. Enough! Enough! You've had opportunity after opportunity, and you have failed. And if you didn't get that message tonight, I certainly did sitting here and listening to it. I'll send you my multi-page report with cuts in the budget, and you can look at it and just ignore it like years past. Don't ignore these people. Do the right thing. Stop with the tax increases and fix the flooding problem. Thank you.
Mayor Castelloso, Susan Haskett.
Good evening. I'm Marlena Castelluzzo, Chair of Virginia Beach Taxpayer Alliance, and once again, we are here to address a city budget that flies in the face of rational judgment. Council, what are you thinking that you allow the city manager to bring forth a budget that puts flashy sparkle before basic needs of citizen well-being? It's unconscionable. Virginia Beach citizen called for drains, not trains, even though Mr. Hansen and the mayor were lobbying nonstop to hoodwink citizens into buying the most expensive 3 miles of transportation this city has ever seen. The general public were not fooled and wanted their immediate safety addressed first and foremost. No one was or is calling for a city hall, a new city hall, at the cost of $50 million. How can you even look at any citizen in the face and say that is a safety priority, Mr. Hansen, or a new beach management facility? What a shock if Armada Hoffler or one of the other major campaign contributors garnered those contracts. We would like to say we're surprised at such a total disregard for citizens' health and well-being, but having spoken, as Reed referred to, before this council on numerous issues facing the decline of citizens' financial status, your repeated failure at fiduciary responsibility is nothing as a surprise. You have an alternative budget that addresses the urgent citizen needs, not your routine opportunity to reward those campaign contributors for their typical non-essentials. Council members Moss and Abbott's proposal puts funding ahead of the manager's schedule and with no negative impact to the citizens. We realize that that Mr. Hansen, with his officer's military retirement and a salary from Virginia Beach that exceeds that of the Secretary of Defense, has a gigantic challenge relating to citizens who are on fixed incomes, struggle to meet basic needs such as food, medicine, and housing, public servants whose salaries are not keeping up with the rising cost of living, and those citizens whose homes were flooded and are still trying to recover from that devastation. But we speak for those Virginia Beach citizens. Councilwoman Kane, your viewing of the ravaged homes moved you to tears according to your Virginia Pilot interview. We respectfully request you turn those crocodile tears into a positive action versus any shallow-based sympathy and support the Moss and Abbott plan. And Mr. Dyer, I've addressed previously your belief that you are a citizen advocate. So once again, the citizens need your advocacy. Do not inflict additional hardship by raising taxes and fees when a solution is before you. You all need to support the Moss-Abbott plan. Thank you.
Susan Haskett and Jenna Roberts.
Hi, I'm Susan Haskett, and I don't have speech, but I was sitting here listening. I am a flood victim. I live in Cape Story by the Sea. I live on Sandalwood. My yard floods even when it rains. Before Matthew, I have 4 French drains in front of my home. They do no good. The water backs up into my yard. We have to clean the debris every time it rains. Matthew came and we flooded. My family's owned that property for over 60 years, before I was born, and it never flooded until then in the house. But I'm here, I thought I should speak on behalf of my neighborhood, and it was like a river that flowed. It ran through and hit certain houses, didn't hit all the houses. It was black, dark, contaminated water that I had to wade through. I live in this home with my older sister and 2 small children, and we're close to being finished. It's been a long road. It's been 6 months. It's taken a toll on us. It's very devastating to us, and I just wanted to speak on behalf of my family and I, and we need to fix the drains. Thank you.
Jenna Roberts.
I wish I had a nice speech, but I don't. My name is Jenna Roberts. I teach kindergarten at Lynn Haven Elementary School. Because my school is a Title I school, I do teach full-day kindergarten. Please understand that full-day kindergarten does not mean we have excessive time in our schedule. Our schedule is actually very full. We begin the day with math. Sorry. We go into AM language arts, and then we roll into our specials. After that, the students come back and we meet for our first reading group with my students. We go to lunch. My students have PE, a brief recess. They come back. We go into our afternoon language arts instruction, And then we also have some remediation time for language arts. We begin our math instruction. Because my students are Title I students, we're in a Title I school, they get additional minutes for math instruction. That means they get extra time to work on their numeracy skills. They also have extra time to work on their critical thinking skills, all things they need to be future ready. Sorry, not very good at public speaking. I also wanted to mention that because we have the extra time built into our schedule, I get to really differentiate for my students. That includes my struggling students as well as my students who are ready for more advanced academic work. Believe it or not, there are some kindergartens who are ready to do first and second grade work in kindergarten, and we get to provide that to them. My students have a regular dismissal time with the rest of the school. Because of that, our school offers a kindergarten coding club. My students get to work with technology. They get to get the basics and get their hands on with Ozobots and Dash and Dot robots. Right now, we have 12 students enrolled in that. The parents understand that they have to pick their students up after school to do it. So there is a lot of value in full-day kindergarten. We are not babysitters. Thank you.
Your Honor, that was the 45th and last speaker.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak before we close the public hearing? If not, thank you all for coming. The hearing is closed.